Hello, and welcome to Booked Solid, New Canaan Library's podcast for teens, young adults, and the forever young adults at heart. I'm Kathleen Krause.
And I'm Sam Connell. And this month we read Another Brooklyn by Jacqueline Woodson. It's part of our town-wide One Author New Canaan event. Another Brooklyn is a coming-of-age story. The main character, August, is an adult, and she reconnects with her brother when her father passes away, and that triggers memories of her teen years in Brooklyn with her close friends. It's just really a beautiful story, beautifully written, and ties together the idea of loss, grief, memory, survival. Jacqueline Woodson's voice is just so powerful. She writes poetic prose.
Before we get started, I just want to warn everyone that we will be spoiling everything, which is what we do every podcast. But this time, we're warning you ahead of time instead of in the middle. So if you are going to read Another Brooklyn, come back to this podcast after you've read it, because we want to talk about absolutely everything that happens in the novel that we found really fascinating. We had a chance to speak with one of our librarians here at New Canaan Library, who was instrumental in getting Jacqueline Woodson to come for this event. So let's listen in and have her tell us a little bit more about One Author New Canaan.
So I'm here today with Laura Cavers, who's going to tell us a little bit about One Author New Canaan. So welcome, Laura. Thank you for coming on our podcast.
Thank you. This is my first ever.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about what you do at New Canaan Library?
Well, I am the reader advisor here at the library, so my job is to keep an eye on what books are coming. So I do a lot of talking with publishers. I go to a lot of their events where I see what books are coming. I even get to talk with some of the authors, and that gives me an idea of maybe who is going to be a good speaker and things like that, and work with the collections people downstairs, and we start to get together a list of books that we want to order. I also create the book news and let people know what books are coming that they would be interested in. I'm in charge of the book groups along with Julia Ray, and we just try and help gather all the books that are that we have resources to and put them in hand, just to make it easier for them to come and just pick them up. And then also I do a lot of programming around books, book chat, author talks, cooking shows with authors who have with chefs or with cookbook authors. So anything having to do with books, that's what I do, basically.
I have sent a lot of people your way for any kind of, really specific recommendation, all of the best books that are currently out and books that have been out recently, and just that people will love to read in New Canaan. So you've been a great resource for all of our readers in town. But in addition, you have also been instrumental in putting together our One Author New Canaan. You got Jacqueline Woodson to come, which we are so excited about. So I was wondering if you could tell us a little bit about One Author New Canaan.
Every 2 years, New Canaan Library celebrates a title or two titles, and it's just something that it's a month-long celebration that we really get into the themes of a book and get into programming that would be interesting, that goes beyond the book. And so this year, in the past, we did One Robot and Spare Parts. 2 years ago we did that. This year we were so impressed with Jacqueline Woodson, and she had just won the Guggenheim Genius Award, that she writes for children, picture books, all the way up to two really amazing adult books with a lot of great teen YA, tween kinds of books right there in the middle, that we just thought this is really someone we want to celebrate. And so, we were so pleased to have her say yes, that she would love to come to New Canaan and really talk with children and adults about kind of her topics, her vision, her writing style, the reason why, what inspires her. And if you've read any of Jacqueline Woodson's books, she's very, very positive. I think she wants to really push that kind of a very positive agenda in her stories. So she's a wonderful pick for One Author New Canaan. I hope everyone's reading her books.
Yeah, the ones that I've read have been really amazing. And as the podcast goes on, everyone will hear what Sam and I thought about the book. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on to the podcast.
Yes, please. Everyone do register for any of the Jacqueline Woodson events.
All right. Well, thank you.
You're very welcome.
Right.
Thank you for having me.
That was so great. And it was so helpful for Laura to tell us more about the event and how it came to be.
I'm super lucky. I get to work with Laura Cavers pretty frequently, and she's just such an asset to our library. So if you ever need a really good book reco, she's the one to ask. Okay, so what did we think of the book?
You're going to put this on me first? I liked it, and I didn't know what to expect because I had read more Jacqueline Woodson books after this book. So this was kind of an earlier introduction to her writing, and it is very poetic and lovely. And I think just on the sentence level, I mean, it really did read more like poetry to me almost than prose. So, and kind of like a dreamy sort of, you get carried along in the writing. It just feels like you're kind of sucked into that world, which I thought it was really fun to have such an immersive experience.
I'm so curious about that because at this point, Kathleen and I know quite a bit of each other's likes and dislikes and what each of us considers a comfort read and a discomfort read. But you don't love books in verse. And I'm always trying to come up with a book in verse for us to read together. And that's not really your bag. And yet, this is not in verse. The writing is poetic, but it is prose. And it also it sort of shifts tone and voices and even scenery. There's a lot of poetic license here for a book in prose. So I'm curious how you responded to that.
I think one of the things that was helpful is that we have one author coming up. And so for this event, I knew I was going to be reading these books. Jacqueline Woodson is both a prose fiction author and also a poet. So I think, definitely her background as a poet informs this kind of writing. But, it's hard to know why I'm resistant to poetry. And I think part of it is just that no one is ever exposed to poetry on the level that they are to prose. So there's always a little bit of discomfort with how do I read this? How do I interact with this? I actually did listen to this. So I wonder if that magnified the sense of poetry or it was someone kind of taking me by the hand and guiding me as they were reading it. I think that the way it shifts in perspective, past and present and kinds of, our narrator, August, is a little bit of an unreliable narrator. So knowing things at the beginning and then seeing what they really mean at the end. All of this stuff is difficult, I think, initially, and I kind of had to go back and look. So I had the book in front of me as well as listening to it. I did think that once I was in that kind of zone that, you just kind of learn to go along with it. And maybe that's the key to poetry in general, but it felt a little more approachable in this book.
So much to jump into here. You gave me so much to think about. What should I start with? First, a disagreement. I do not feel that people are less exposed to poetry, and I've been saying this to a lot of my teen readers for years. I believe that music and music lyrics are the everyday consumption of poetry. And all of these teens that tell me that they don't like poetry, all of these adults that tell me that they don't like poetry can probably recite their favorite lyrics. Also, just so much music as a theme running through this book. In the beginning, when August talks about how she meets her girlfriends, Gigi, Angela, and Sylvia, it's actually written that they come together like improvisational jazz. And then there's different parts. I think there's a part where the main character really starts to shut down when she deals with more death. And she actually turns to music as an escape, and then she ultimately turns to travel as an escape. But even the way this book is almost a love letter to Brooklyn and how they're out in the streets listening to songs, these music tracks that are part of memory, which is such a huge part of what this book is about. Another huge theme running through this is memory. But what do you want to tackle first? Death memory, or do you want to argue with me about poetry?
No, I don't want to argue with you. I think I agree with you that, we can look at music as sort of the introduction that we all have to poetry. And I think the thing is that it seems like there's a disconnect. There's a divide that maybe doesn't really exist, but you see it in a book and then suddenly it feels different. We really have all the light themes to talk about this podcast. Very exciting. Let's start with death, because I think this book has such a great opening line, which is, poetic, but also just, I think there's something to be said for when a book starts out on an opening line that you're just immediately like, I have to learn more.
Do you have that ready for us? Because I can't come up off the top of my head with the opening line.
So it was, for a long time, my mother wasn't dead yet.
Oh, yes. That is good. That's a great opening line. The death of the mother is fascinating, how it's handled. It starts with that. It ends with that. It's the big struggle that August grapples with. It's almost hard to tell as she revisits her teen years and her coming of age years, those tender years where friendship is more important than almost anything else. You don't really see how everything is going to circle back, but it does. The story is woven together. These four girls that have such different backgrounds, even though they live in the same neighborhood, and they have such different hopes and dreams and what you think is their future and what their future actually becomes when they reach adulthood. Well, fortunately, not all of them do. The mother, I think, is the thing that really challenges whether or not you can consider this a reliable character. It's funny that you saw it that way. I didn't think she was an unreliable character. I thought one of the themes overall in the book is that memory is an unreliable companion, because I think she's always speaking her truth. The book approaches memory in so many ways, and how people no longer there still have an impact on you. And the line is repeated over and over in the book. This is memory. There are different ways to connect to what is memory and what we remember. And I think that's why this poetic prose works so well, because I feel like that replicates the way memory works.
Definitely. Yeah, there's not really any kind of linear narrative. You know what's happening because it's kind of revealed piecemeal. It's woven together, as you said. So there are just lots of little kind of fragmentary sections, a paragraph here, then it switches to something else, and all of these things that she's kind of thinking through. And I think things that maybe she's kept buried and then resurface. I guess it's true that unreliable narrator, unreliable memory, these might be kind of distinct concepts. And I don't know that she's deliberately lying. I don't know exactly how to think about how she is processing her mother's death or not processing it, as the case may be. But I think it is interesting, too, because you have this death as kind of the beginning. This is sort of what leads them to move from Tennessee to Brooklyn and kind of start her new life. So there are kind of these different sections of her life. One ends and then another begins. But it is recurring. There are different tragedies throughout her life, and I think they get revealed at different moments in the book. So it's interesting to see, I mean, just based on what her career becomes later, she's obviously trying to grapple with how that factors into her life, because she pursues then anthropology and how other cultures deal with death and funeral practices.
It's interesting to read the back matter of the book when Jacqueline Woodson talks about just what an emotional experience it was for her to write the book. She admits that she does not know what the characters are going to. She doesn't sort of have a plan, and it's almost a discovery in her writing process, what happens to these characters, who survives and who does not survive. And that feels very self-exploratory. She talks about mining her own teen years for the content of writing these four characters. But also, I find that August may be unreliable, but I think what really is happening here is that August is lying to herself as a way to protect herself from grief. So when her mother passes away, she convinces herself that her mother isn't gone and is going to be back tomorrow, maybe tomorrow. She tells her brother that, who the brother resents that a little bit because he's younger and believed her and was confused by it. But it really comes to a head. She sort of triggers her own memory of her mother's death when one of her own friends, when Angela loses her mother. Angela's mother, who struggles with substance abuse throughout the book, which really traumatizes Angela and is one of her struggles growing up in Brooklyn. Her mother eventually passes away and is found on a roof. In her effort to comfort Angela, she ends up repeating things she said to herself. It's not your mother's fine, your mother's coming back. And this confuses her friends, it confuses herself, and she segues into that mantra that is what she said to herself, which created a self-denial, just a total denial of her mother's death. And that's when she revisits that scene. And there's all these questions. What's in the urn? What's in the urn? It's painful to read. It's powerful. And, what lengths does a child go through to deal with that kind of grief? I feel like is just so beautifully explored and allowed to play out slowly as August starts to remember the trauma of losing her mother.
I think as a counterpoint to that, sort of to balance, I guess, in the book, she has this struggle with grief and grieving, and then the balance she finds in her life is through this strong friendship with these girls. So I kind of liked seeing, obviously, there are struggles during the time that they are friends, and then, sadly, not all of them make it to adulthood, as you said, and their friendship kind of dissolves over the course of their teen years through, just various things that happen. But I think there is something really profound, just beautifully written and thoughtful about the way their friendship helps them and changes them, particularly when they are just entering their teen years, that I thought was a really nice sort of balance to all the kind of darkness.
I did love the way the friendship was written. It was also very honestly written. In the beginning, the way August longingly looks out her window and sees these girls that have each other and wants to be a part of that. And then she does become part of that. These girls really hold each other up through a lot of crisis, which is a theme that we see in a lot of Jacqueline Woodson's books. These girls harbored each other through really difficult times. They all have their struggles, their pressures. There's even a real fear where they talk about famous murder cases and knowing that there's dangerous places to be in the park. There is a fear of not only assault and sexual assault, which actually does happen, but there's also this fear of their own sexual awakening, which really frightens them in some ways. I love the way it's written, how these girls prop each other up and how they manage to survive this Brooklyn together by banding together, by being there for each other. August has her friends to get her through, whereas her brother really relies on religion and even academics. So they have these different escapes. And then as these friendships start to fall apart, it really came down to August refusing to have sex with her boyfriend, Jerome. And so he breaks up with her, and then her friend Sylvia starts dating Jerome. In that betrayal, that it triggers, again, this memory of her mother, because you can see how powerful it is at the age of 15 to be betrayed in such a way by your friend. And then it ties back into this feeling of betrayal of her mother dying because she remembers the suicide.
I think, it's such a tough part to read when everything is kind of falling apart. And then just the tragic way it ends with Gigi, where they don't, she wants to basically reunite them, and then no one shows up, and then effectively tells her that their friendship is over, and Gigi, unable to cope, jumps off the roof of a cast party that they're hosting for the musical that she's in, and then she dies, in their teen years, and then everyone is just completely separated until August sees Sylvia again 20 years later or so.
It's sad the way these friendships ended. There was a moment where she could have reconnected with Sylvia, and August just steps off the train. She just does not want to. She rejects this potential reconnection with a childhood friend. Gigi was just devastating to read that part of the story, because in the lead up to that, you understand that two of these girls are dealing with deceased mothers. One is dealing with a teen pregnancy, and Gigi was the one that everyone thought was going somewhere. She was a talented performer. Not only did her friends not show up and her mom not show up, but she made some mistake in her performance and the entire auditorium laughed at her. And that haunts August to hear that was such a painful public moment for Gigi, and that Gigi so unexpectedly dies by suicide. I did want to let all of our readers know suicide is more common than people realize. There's a phone number to call, National Suicide Prevention, which is 1-800-273-TALK, TALK. But also for those that are just on their phones, there's a crisis text line, and you can text 741-741 and have a conversation with people who are qualified and to gain resources. And that's not just for self-harm or thoughts of suicide, but also abuse, stress, bullying, depression, body image issues, gender, sexuality, isolation, and loneliness. So many of these themes that are in this book are things that people actually grapple with. So I just wanted to make sure everybody had those resources.
As you listed that, I did realize that this book basically has all of that in it. It is a heavy book, but so thoughtfully done that I think it doesn't offer answers necessarily, but I think it is an interesting meditation on all of these difficult themes. So even though as we're discussing it, it's just tragedy after tragedy, it really was a well done book that I really enjoyed.
I do want to say that I feel that the ending was hopeful. I don't know if you thought it was or not, but the way August does see a therapist, August does travel, she does immerse herself in studies. This experience drives her to learn more about other cultures and other traditions. And then there's that moment when, even though Angela disappeared and everyone feared for the worst, Angela is now a famous dancer on television and is successful. So I think there's a lot of beauty in this. I think examining real life crises and emotions and realistically looking at how friendships from our youth can change and separate. I thought it was beautifully written, and I thought there was a message of hope.
I think that's definitely a good point. Yeah, Angela has become very successful. I believe August's brother is having a baby, and they're discussing that she's going to be an aunt. So I think there were a lot of, amid all of these kinds of tragic things that happen in their youth, and, you know, to a degree were continuing to happen. Life isn't easy. They still have these glimmers of hope and things that are good for them. And it does leave you it leaves you feeling okay in spite of all of these kinds of heavy memories and the dark topics.
So do you have a quote to share with us?
I do. So I wanted to talk about the scene where August first sees the girls early on, and she's looking longingly from the window. And so she's just moved to Brooklyn at this point. So this is the quote I have. It was during this summer that I first saw Sylvia, Gigi, and Angela. The three of them walked down our block, dressed in halter tops and shorts, arms linked together, heads thrown back, laughing. I watched until they disappeared, wondering who they were, how they became. My mother had not believed in friendships among women. She said women weren't to be trusted. Keep your arm out, she said, and keep women a whole other hand away from the farthest tips of your fingernails. She told me to keep my nails long. But as I watched Sylvia, Angela, and Gigi walk past our window, I was struck with something deeply unfamiliar, a longing to be part of who they were, to link my own arm with theirs and remain that way forever.
That's lovely. I think everyone can relate to that, especially as we've gone through a year of isolation. There's something very beautiful in the way this book elevates this common experience of teen friendships and how powerful and important they can be, and how much that moment in time when you start to count on direction and connection with your peers more than your family. Everybody experiences this as a process of becoming an individual and separating from the familiar and embracing the bigger world. I think it was beautifully written. I do like reading poetry. I do like reading books in verse, but there's something about this writing that just sings. It was beautiful. I really loved it.
Do you have some read-alikes for us?
I do. Well, so the obvious move here, if you enjoyed this book and you loved the writing, I strongly recommend you to read Jacqueline Woodson's other books. For teens and those a little bit younger, Brown Girl Dreaming is absolutely beautiful. It is in verse. You can even read it as an adult. I did. Harbor Me is another wonderful book, and this really taps into a lot of the friendship themes that we saw in this book. I loved Harbor Me. I read it recently. It is a bit more of a middle grade or it's geared towards a teen read. However, I just thought it was beautiful. The way they talk about friendship, the way these kids bolster each other up through hardships. And she does that really well in Harbor Me, if you like that aspect of this book. And on the adult end of Jacqueline Woodson, I would recommend Red at the Bone, which a lot of people are really enjoyed. That's another wonderful book. Jacqueline Woodson is absolutely prolific. She writes picture books. She writes adults books, teen books. She has such beautiful command of language and has such insight in the way she observes humans and relationships and interactions. There's so much truth in her writing. What you can some of her books I have to slow down and read slowly to digest the beauty of the writing. That reminds me of Toni Morrison. So if you're not familiar with Toni Morrison and you love Jacqueline Woodson's writing, Toni Morrison is another author that I've read through most of her works. She does do coming of age. I recommend starting with Sula and then moving your way through The Bluest Eye and then Beloved. It's that kind of soaring writing where you read a passage in prose and you have to stop and take a breath because it's powerful like poetry. Speaking of poetry, next month is National Poetry Month, which I love, and just a few things to think about. Yes, I love this idea that poetry is a little bit everywhere. And what I like about poetry is you can just digest something small and think about it. There's some podcasts out there that's fun if you want to do a search on poetry. I hope everyone was able to listen to Amanda Gorman at the inauguration. Her poem, The Hill We Climb, will be coming out for those of you that want to have a copy of that. One of my favorite poets, Naomi Shihab Nye. She's also quite prolific. My favorite collection is probably 19 Varieties of Gazelle. And if you just want to pick up a poem that I just want to recommend, Joy Harjo is our poet laureate for the U.S., and she's the first Native American to hold that position. She has a poem called Perhaps the World Ends Here. And it's a short poem. It's a simple poem. And of course I love it because it's about a kitchen table and just life. And it's a beautiful thing to read and just reflect and maybe force one of your friends to read and chat with you about it. If you're interested, Kathleen.
I'll write it down.
So what should we read next?
So this is really exciting. Our next episode is our season 2 finale, and we're bringing back voting. So I guess we didn't really choose, but we have 2 choices that we're really excited about to celebrate the, I think we've mentioned this in past podcasts, but we love the list that the high school comes out with for summer reading every year. So we were really lucky to get a sneak peek of the list in progress they have for this year. And we also have the last year's 2020 list that we're working off of. So we picked one book from each, and it's up to our listeners to vote for which one they want to do next month. First choice is Ninth House by Leigh Bardugo. So this one is about Galaxy Alex Stern, the most unlikely member of Yale's freshman class. She was raised in LA by a hippie mom, dropped out of school early, and fell into the world of shady drug dealers. dead-end jobs, much worse. By age 20, she was the sole survivor of a horrific multiple homicide, and some people were saying that she'd thrown her life away. But at her hospital bed, she was offered a second chance to attend one of the world's most elite universities on a full ride. The question is, what is the catch and why her? So she arrives in New Haven, tasked by her mysterious benefactors with monitoring the activities of Yale's secret societies. These 8 windowless tombs are well known to be haunts of the future rich and powerful, from high-ranking politicos to Wall Street and Hollywood's biggest players. But their occult activities are revealed to be far more sinister and more extraordinary than any paranoid imagination might conceive. So if you like these kind of secret society, school-set novels with lots of intrigue and mystery and magic, that might be your pick. Second choice is The House in the Cerulean Sea by T.J. Klune. So this book came out in 2020. Linus Baker leads a quiet, solitary life. At 40, he lives in a tiny house with a devious cat in his old records. He's a caseworker for the department in charge of magical youth, and he spends his days overseeing the well-being of children in government-sanctioned orphanages. So he's unexpectedly summoned to this mysterious island orphanage where 6 dangerous children reside. A gnome, a sprite, a wyvern, an unidentifiable green blob, a were Pomeranian, and the Antichrist. He must set aside his fears and determine whether or not they're likely to bring about the end of days. But they're not the only secret that the island keeps. The caretaker is the charming and enigmatic Arthur Parnassus, who will do anything to keep his ward safe. As Arthur and Linus grow closer, long-held secrets are exposed, and Linus must make a choice: destroy a home or watch the world burn.
Do you have a preference? I mean, we're going to stick to democracy here, but do you have a preference at this point?
Both of them seem like they go pretty hard, which I like. Very dramatic. Lots of magic and adventure, and I don't know what to expect from either of them. So we picked them off the list because we trust the lists. We actually haven't read either of them.
Yeah, so that'll be interesting. But yeah, I'm game for either one of those. Although I think I kind of have one I prefer to read. Hopefully it's going to get warmer out, and I'll be reciting poetry to you.
No. That's okay.
Anyway, this was really fun.
This was great. Yeah, so I'm really excited that we're coming up on 2 full seasons of this podcast. Began with a dream. It began a year ago.
It exactly a year ago, which is pretty wild. And we've managed to squeeze out 2 seasons.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks for listening. Bye.